Good morning, sir.
Good morning,
Hope you are
Abhisarika.
good.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
fine. I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
So, how long do you think I'll speak?
Sir, we want to listen to you full day,
No,
frankly
no,
speaking.
no.
But
I have to rush, Abhisarika,
yes,
for addressing PhD student. There is a
sir.
compulsory course for PhD students, so I have to speak there as well. And I have one or two other appointments. So by 12 we should finish, or 12:15. That is what you write.
No, as you wish, sir. You can restrict your because as I told that it's up to you then.
Okay, okay. So maybe you
Only
know
for
that.
namesake, I'm here. I am
Okay.
also one of the participants who want to listen to you, sir.
No, 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 no.
Frankly,
Thank you.
honestly speaking.
You are humble. You are humble, but
No, really,
yeah.
that's the fact.
Okay. Thank you.
So, with your permission, should we start the session, sir? I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
it's
Yeah,
already
yeah.
time.
Please, please, please.
Here we have our research scholar, Satya. She's doing her PhD from our school. So she will host the session. Satya, please.
Morning. I am Miss Satya Pramod, Research Scholar in English from the School of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences, REVA University. A warm welcome to everyone to Day 2 of the International Multidisciplinary Conference on Representation of Violence in Literature and Media, organized by REVA University in association with Liverpool John Moores University, Liverpool, England. We are pleased to receive such an enthusiastic and overwhelming response from academia and researchers across the world for this international conference. It is a sincere request from our side to all the participants to keep their audio and video on mute unless directed otherwise. In case of any query, kindly contact the organizing committee through the WhatsApp group. You may also post your questions in the chat box, which we would address at the end of the session. I take this opportunity to welcome our resource person, Dr. Raj Kumar, moderator, Dr. Abhisarika Prajapati, faculty members, researchers, and all the participants who have joined us across the world. Our moderator for the day, Dr. Abhisarika Prajapati, our own Abhisarika Prajapati, a well-known scholar in the academic circles, is a research vertical head of the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, and an associate professor of English, REVA University. With teaching and research experience of more than 15 years, Dr. Abhisarika has several publications to her credit, having made immense contributions in research in the field of humanities and social sciences. It gives me great joy to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Raj Kumar, who would be conducting the session on Narrating Violence, a reading of Dalit novels. A professor in the Department of English, Delhi University, Dr. Raj Kumar's research interests include autobiographical studies, Dalit literature, Indian writing in English, Oriya literature, and post-colonial literature. He has translated literary texts from Indian languages, especially Odia, to English, and also published several books. Some of his notable works include Dalit personal narratives, Reading Caste, Nation and Identity, the English translation of Akhila Naik's Bheda, and Dalit literature and criticism. We are indeed honored to have you amongst us, sir. I now hand over the session to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Satya. Good morning to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Abhisarika Prajapati and her team to have invited me for this important deliberation. As the main title of my paper today has been already announced, but I would like to again, reiterate that I'll be talking about the idea of violence. So that's why the title is Narrating Violence.
Just a moment, sir. Something went wrong and we are not able to hear you. Just 1 minute, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I think
Now
we
you
can.
can hear me. Yeah. So,
Yes, yes.
yeah. So thank you, Satya, uh, for introducing me. So, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Abhisarika Prajapati and her team who have invited me for this important deliberation. As we know, that this is a worldwide, that attendance. Maybe that for last 2 days, maybe today is the third day, and the idea here is to deliberate on the various maybe sides of violence, and that's why I've chosen a topic: narrating violence, a reading of Dalit novel. I have a paper, that, so I will take maybe good 30, 40 minutes, and then maybe, that what I will do, I would expect the audience to ask me as many questions as possible so that it will be dialogical instead of, that just finishing reading a paper. And that's why, that let me begin my paper. Caste violence is invariably the common theme in almost all the lit novels. This is what the statement I'm going to make. Therefore, the primary focus of my paper today is to study the nature of caste violence depicted in Dalit novels. It may be stated here that in the history of Dalit writing, the genre of novel seems to have arrived quite late. As we all know, Dalit started writing poetry first and then autobiography, short story, of course, that came in between, and novel as a literary genre came towards the end, maybe, that as late as maybe 1990s. And the first Dalit novel is considered to be Joseph McGowan's Angoliath in Gujarati, which is translated as The Stepchild, got published by Oxford University Press in 2004. Now, while talking about Dalit novel, I need not talk about the generic term called Dalit, because I believe that my audience, those who are listening to me, would have got little clarification at least, that who are Dalit. Dalit is a term that suggests, that it is replaced by the term called Shudra, Ati Shudra, Panchama, Antyaja, Harijan, depressed class, scheduled caste. And Dalit is a term given by Dalit themselves, whereas all other terms that I just stated while little, little while before are given by either social reformers, politicians, bureaucrat, administrator, or the state. So I'm very particularly, that trying to use the term Dalit and not the other terms maybe, and if necessary, I will invoke some of the historical terms, maybe, that Harijan or maybe untouchable, etc., in the context of debating and discussing about the existential condition of Dalit. Now, most of the Dalit novels are written in Indian languages, and only a few Dalit writers write novels in English. Some of the famous Dalit novels, let me enlist, at least that for the audience. Joseph McGowan's Angoliath, written in Gujarati in 1987, and it has been translated as The Stepchild, as I stated, that published by Oxford University Press in 2004. P. Sivakami's The Grip of Change. She is a Tamilian, and her second novel is also titled The Taming of Women. G. Kalyan Rao's, a Telugu writer, Antarani Basantam in Telugu, but translated as Untouchable Spring. Bama, of course, we have heard about. She is a Tamil Dalit writer whose novels Banmam, Vendetta, is published by again Oxford University Press. Sharan Kumar Limbale, a Marathi Dalit writer, has titled his novel as Hindu a novel. This was published back in 2010. Meena Kandaswamy's The Gypsy Goddess. It is really an experimental novel where she talks not only about caste violence but also the very idea of how to write a Dalit novel. Devanura Mahadeva in your state, Karnataka, Kusuma Vale. Though it is written in Kannada, but as we all know, the controversy that Kannada readers could not read this novel initially because they asked Mahadeva to write first in Kannada because he has used local dialect, and then now it is translated into English as the same title, Kusuma Bale. Ocular Naik's Veda. This is the first Odia Dalit novel which I have translated and got published in Oxford University Press way back in 2010. And the second Odia Dalit novel, Vasudev Sunani Poda Podi. This is, that where I concentrate my paper mostly. This is going to be published very soon. I have translated it into English. So the audience, that you have to forgive me if suppose, that you have not read the novel because half of my paper I would try because it is difficult really to bring all the novels into account while talking about the, narrative of violence. So I will concentrate on only one novel maybe, that in the second half of my paper. By writing these novels, Dalit novelists have started raising caste question in the public sphere. In this context, Bakhtin's prescribed theoretical approach, dialogical imagination, works perfectly. Here I would like to reiterate that writing novel is a very important act for Dalit writers because novel, as we all know, is universal, whereas poetry, autobiography, and short story have limited, that scope of at least, that thinking about the world. Following social stratification, the way caste violence works in India, the only way to contain spatial violence is to document the social history of Dalit community so that possible dialogues between the writer and the reader are possible. Since Dalit literature has come out due to cultural conflicts between Dalit and non-Dalit, reading Dalit novel will provide us an opportunity to peep into Dalit world and understand Dalit worldviews. For this purpose, I have selected Vasudev Sunani's Odia Dalit novel Padapudi, which is certainly going to be published in English. In my talk, I will try to emphasize how Dalit have been the victim of caste atrocities in the novel. But before I do so, let me examine the idea of caste, which remains a central concern of all the novels. It is true that the idea of caste has generated many competing discourses. Theoreticians and philosophers, especially those who belong to the Hindu school of thought, would defend caste division and varnashrama dharma. This, of course, that also appropriately defended by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi himself. If we bring the debate between Gandhi and Ambedkar, for example, Gandhi was very stubborn to retain Varnashrama Dharma because he at one point of time talks about how untouchability is a problem in India, and that's why it is a bolt on Hinduism, if I can quote his speech. But he suggests that Varnashrama Dharma has to be retained, and that's why untouchables would be rehabilitated in the fourth Varna order, that means Shudra. Whereas Ambedkar, way back in 1936, talks about annihilation of caste. The best ever book written on caste is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's Annihilation. But caste is not getting annihilated, as we all know. So, let's continue with the, the dialogue. But it has been proved beyond doubt that caste is the real culprit in Indian society. If you ask me, that where is caste because you all belong to 21st century, then please refer to the Sunday newspaper, particularly matrimonial column, whereby caste is being always invoked as Ambedkar, toward the end of his book, talks about caste is nothing but endogamy. What I want also to theorize here that caste is inherently violent and produces conflict in society. And that's why intercaste marriages in India is not possible. It doesn't work actually, that it is happening, but most of the cases, as we know, the Khap Panchayat is dictating the terms, and that's why intercaste marriages are hardly being, successful. Given its exclusivist nature, it is detrimental to national cohesiveness. What I want to propose here is that because of caste, it is not possible to bring unity among all constituency of the Indian society, and that's why it is anti-national. Caste is basically anti-national, and that's why particularly two good books I would like to refer here. One is G. Aloysius' book, Nationalism Without a Nation in India, and of course, Partha Chatterjee, Fragmented Nations. These are two, that they remind us about how it is difficult for all Indians to come together, and that's why fraternity doesn't work here. So given its exclusivist nature, it is detrimental to national cohesiveness and opposed to democratic philosophy, scientificism, and reason. So caste is also not only anti-national, also anti-scientific, etc., etc. It is purposefully oppressive for more than 200 millions of Dalit population, more than exactly, that there is no caste census, but we believe that every sixth person in India is a Dalit. And that's where, that more than 200 billions of Dalit population of India who are treated worse than cats and dogs of the street by the upper caste. The upper caste try to exercise their power over the socio-culturally marginalized community. And here the power, that I'm reminded of Michel Foucault's book, Knowledge Power Dichotomy. The upper caste try to exercise their power over the socio-culturally marginalized Dalit, dubiously asserting their superior caste status. Kalyan Rao, a Telugu Dalit writer, which whom I have already referred to in his famous novel Untouchable Spring, captures the various location of caste thus, and I quote Kalyan Rao here. In this country, the air that one breathes has, the water one drinks has caste, the field canal that flows and the land that yields harvest have caste, the school, the temple, and the village square have caste. The food one eats, the house one lives in, and the clothes one wears have caste. The word one speaks has caste. Literature and culture have caste. The state has caste. Its laws have caste. Justice and the courts have caste. The curves and the symmetry have caste. God has caste. Devil has caste. Unquote. Untouchability and atrocities are the byproduct of the caste society. Both are evil in nature and heinous in practice. While the practice of untouchability makes Dalit virtual slaves of the caste society, atrocity brings untold miseries in their lives by humiliating them, torturing them, and sometimes killing them. Here, I'm reminded of Jyotiva Phule's book, very famous book, Gulamgiri, which is translated in English as slavery, whereby he talks about caste is nothing but slavery. In fact, one must understand the relationship between untouchability and atrocities. It is no surprise that atrocities against the Dalit are closely related to untouchability, and the perpetration of atrocity has to be explained by the persistence of untouchability and by increasing resentment of Dalit against the social indignities emanating from the practice of untouchability in different forms. Quite often, we come across instances of atrocities allegedly perpetrated on Dalit by the upper caste. Cases of evicting Dalits from their homes, depriving them of their lands, denying them the use of public wells, tanks, bathing ghats, and burial grounds, forbidding them to enter shops, hotels, restaurants, and temples, debarring them from police and medical help, refusing to them services by barbers and washermen, and even preventing them from growing mustache upwards, riding bicycle, etc. are reported frequently in newspaper. You must be reading all these instances daily. Incidents of avoidable social tension and conflicts resulting in violence and death are also frequently mentioned. Caste has assumed many complex avatara in contemporary times. In fact, if you by chance that have come across a book M.N. Srinivas has written, the last book that he wrote before he passed away is titled as Caste, its 20th century avatara. But I would like you to take to maybe 21st century whereby the caste is getting strengthened in the age of globalization. So what I state here is caste has assumed many complex avatara in contemporary times, and despite deterrent laws against caste-based discrimination and violence being in place, atrocities against Dalit are increasing every year. You must come across, that at least 1989 Dalit Atrocity Act, whereby any case under this act is considered to be a criminal offense. And that though there are laws, but then the effective use of these laws are not seen, at least that in Indian state. And that's where statistics available on atrocities are quite alarming. I quote one or two instances, but I'm sure that you will get much more, because if you try to click through Google God, the Scheduled Caste Commission report yearly being published, it is quite alarming. Vidya Devi, for instance, writes that in a state like Rajasthan alone, between the year 1999 and 2000, crime against Dalit averaged at about 5,024 a year, with 46 killings and 138 cases of rape. This is one state. So you can multiply, that Indian state, and you will be, that able to comprehend the grim situation what Dalit have to face. The existential situation of Dalit can be further goes from the following editorial title, Epic Shame. This is from a magazine called Combat Law, the Human Rights and Law Bi-monthly, and I quote, that one issue of December 2009, whereby, and I'm sure that the cases must have increased in between, and I quote this editorial. If we have a look at the available data, more than 62,000 human rights violations are recorded against Dalits annually. So it suggests, that more than 62,000. Perhaps, that in 2023, it must have reached to the million. With an average of 2 Dalits assaulted every hour. So by the time, that we'll be finishing this paper, my paper, that a Dalit must have been beaten somewhere in India. 2 murder and at least an equal number of torture or burn every day. So, that 2 Dalit are murdered every day. Dalit women in India face triple burden of caste, class, and gender, with an average of 3 Dalit women and children raped every day. So please, that try to recollect this number. These are not statistics. This is the history of Dalit. This is also the life of Dalit in India. It may be mentioned here that the cases reported to the police are only the tip of the iceberg. A large number of cases of atrocities go unreported. The reasons for not reporting to the police are several. A general lack of awareness of the Atrocity Act of 1989 by the Dalit, because even today, maybe that 52% Dalit are literate, the rest are illiterate. So illiterate Dalit cannot know about the written laws. Also a belief in karma theory, because that is their fate, they believe. Distraught of the police, because police, as we all know, everywhere is not supposedly to be trusted. And also the government machinery. Fear of the upper caste people, they might, they take revenge by eliminating Dalits from their land. Complexities of the long-drawn legal process, because once a case gets registered, it goes for years and years in India. A sense of insecurity and economic dependence on caste Hindus. Sometimes, that a person dies but doesn't get justice. And that's why Indian laws are basically for the rich, not for the poor. It is amply clear now that even if there are enough laws to address the caste atrocities, a majority of Dalits do not and cannot benefit from them due to structural problem. I emphasize here structural problem in Indian society. And that's why Dr. B.R. Ambedkar talked about structural changes, not, that changes superficial, superficially. Many Indian laws for these reasons are toothless. This takes me back to our earlier statement that caste is a fact of Indian life. And as long as caste exists, untouchability and atrocity will persist. This has been the history of India. This has also been the history of Dalit. Unfortunately, Indian academics and media have shied away from discussing the gruesome atrocities committed against Dalit by the upper caste on a regular basis. I'm very happy that all 3 days you are discussing about the role of literature and media. They do not want to see any relationship between atrocities and caste. Therefore, whether it is Chundur massacre or Jhajar murder, I'm sure you know that some of you have heard about or read a lot about, Kherlanji killing, or Lathur house burning. Lathur is a place in Odisha where 40 houses, Dalit houses, were burned down, and that is perhaps the, important theme of Vasudev Sunani's Pudapudi will be shortly going to discuss. So whether it is Chundu massacre or Jhajar murder, Kherlanji killing or Lathur house burning, it matters a little to the upper caste academician. We do not get any reference to these incidents from the pages of Indian history because Indian historians are mostly from the upper caste who are naturally biased against Dalit. A report on atrocity on Dalit in Odisha records this fact, and I quote this report. This was a report prepared to understand, that the nature of untouchability and atrocity happening in Odisha. The untouchability and atrocity began from time immemorial, but definitely from the date the Aryans set their feet on the Indian soil. This is what the report says. Because of the lengthy duration, the violent process has taken many of the atrocities committed by the outsiders have remained till today in folk tales and folklores and folk songs. The recorded history of the state was scribed by the invaders, and to the extent one reads their distorted history and parochial achievement. The sufferings undergone by the original Indians are conspicuous by their absence from the annals of historians, but their continuance is a living testimony to what all has been happening all these centuries. Unquote. The above quote describe Dalit as the original inhabitants of India and the present-day upper caste Hindus as the descendants of the Aryan who came from outside. Here, space will not allow us to take the debate further. But one thing is clear, the upper caste, including Indian academics, always feel proud to be a superior race as compared to Dalit whom they consider low. They always try to guard their racial seed and blood against any kind of impurity, lest they should be polluted by the local. And that's where the idea of purity and pollution everywhere, including in academic environment. This is what the fundamental function of the caste in Indian society is. It is therefore not surprising that Dalit sufferings, social ignominy have been excluded from the pages of mainstream Indian history. Is it academically desirable? I asked several questions and leave it to you. Is it academically desirable? Do we have any means to judge this sort of academic practice? What about academic ethics? Because all of us, we are academic. Here, one footnote maybe, that for all of you, you might be happy to refer to sometime subaltern historians, and the founder Ranjit Guha recently passed down. Out of 8 volumes, that nowhere Dalit get represented, except maybe, that one whereby Dalit and Muslim, there is a combined volume, little reference to Dalit. So when you talk about subaltern, where are Dalit? And that's where a writer like Kalyan Rao, in his novel Untouchable Spring, talks about my history. Where is my ancestors' history? No, these are two questions that that he tries to not only ask questions to all of us, but then that his entire book is an attempt to rewrite Dalit history. But Dalit being absent from the pages of mainstream Indian history raises serious question about the professional integrity of the historian. It also alerts one to another important issue. Do Dalit belong to Indian nation state? Dalit historians like Chinna Rao have already taken note of how exclusivist is the mantra of Indian academics. Therefore, the aforementioned question is a challenge to the discourse of hegemonic historiography. Chinna Rao writes, and I quote him, "The crucial significance of history in post-colonial societies lies not only in the retrieval of the past, but also in constructing identity. Historical enterprise in our country is thus confronted with an apparent crisis in this very selective appropriation of the past. Thus, historyless community pose a challenge both in terms of history writing and reconstitution of a broader social base for rebuilding the nation state. Thus, this study of such excluded groups is of immense relevance on account of the inherent radical democratic identity of their movement that offers a critique to the project of the nation state." Unquote. It may be relevant here to state that in the meantime, Indian upper caste historians have already realized their lapses and of late have included Dalit in their revisionist discourses. The attempts made by the subaltern historians constitute an immediate case in point. Like historians, academics from other disciplines like social sciences and also humanities like ours have also started doing their bit by introducing Dalit studies in their teaching and research programs. Although more for reasons of professional expediency within the academia than ideological commitment. Now, I'm happy that, and Dr. Abhisarika, that told me that there are also texts prescribed in REVA University as part of their Dalit discourse. But the consolation is that we have now Dalit narrative presented from the victim's point of view. It is in this context that reading caste violence for Dalit novel is important. Let's see how Vasudev Sunani's Podapuri explores caste question and initiate a dialogue among different constituencies of the caste society on the issue of social justice. So my second part is about reading Dalit novel in the context of narrating caste violence. I'm sure you know that none of you you know that have read Vasudev Sunani Podapudi because it is written in Odia and yet to be published in English. As I told, I have already translated and it is already in maybe you know that with the publisher. So hope you know that within next maybe 7-8 months it will come out and hopefully you will be able to read. Let me you know that elaborate it for the benefits of the audience. Vasudev Sunani's Padapudi is the second Odia Dalit novel after Akil Naik's Veda, which narrates about Dalit atrocities in Odisha. In January 2012, when India was going to celebrate the 65 years of the Republic, the upper caste mobs at Lathur village in Balangir district of Odisha stirs the entire Dalit basti over a trivial matter. And the trivial matter is, of course, you know that there was a case of theft, which was actually a false case, and that's why you know that upper caste they tried to mobilize and wanted to assault Dalit, and in the due course they torch nearly 40 Dalit houses. As a result, the members of the 40 Dalit families lost their homes and became refugees in their own village. This was the first time that such a large-scale Dalit atrocity happened in Odisha. But the then government of Odisha did not see it as a law and order problem. Taking an indifferent view of the event, the local administration took their time to reach the village. By then, Dalit had lost everything. Since no prompt action came from the local authorities, be it police or the fire service, Dalit became mute spectators of their own houses and properties burning in front of them. They lost their savings and livelihood, which they had worked so hard to achieve over the years. In the meantime, 10 years have already been lapsed after the gruesome incident, but the victims of atrocities have not been properly rehabilitated till now. The novel is a fictionalized account of the real incident which took place in Odisha. The novel underscores victimization and marginalization of Dalit in a backward state of Odisha, where the upper caste continue to exercise their power even in the age of globalization. Mokaru is the narrator protagonist of the novel. He is an Odia Dalit migrant who lives in one of the sprawling slums of Raipur, the capital city of Chhattisgarh. He works as a peon cum security guard at a private company in Raipur. His father, Manglu, is a rickshaw puller and his mother, Savis, is a homemaker. All of them work hard to earn their livelihood. They live quite a decent life and guard their self-respect and honor with patience and perseverance. As the story unfolds, we come to know that Mokaru originally belongs to a village called Banjipali, which is close to Lathur, where the caste atrocities have taken place. In fact, the victims of caste atrocity happen to be Mokaru's close relatives. So getting news of the atrocities, Mokaru immediately catches a train and heads for Lathur. While traveling by the train, Mokaru recollects various events of the past and tries to connect those with the present. Thus, the stories of the novel moves backward and forward. During the course of the train journey, Mokaru recollects his childhood events and gets emotional. At Banjipali village, he and his parents worked like slaves for the Gauntia, a Brahmin landlord, who was cruel to the poor and grossly casteist. While Mokaru's father worked in the Gauntia's agricultural field days and nights, his mother did all the odd jobs at the Gauntia's household. Mokaru tended their cattle, neglecting his education. The payments they received from the Gauntia for their hard work were next to nothing. It was a pittance, not even sufficient to have 2 square meals every day. So they struggled hard to survive. A day came when Mokaru, along with his parents, were forced to leave their ancestral home at the dead of the night to escape the wrath of upper caste villagers who wanted to kill them for a small untoward incident. Boarding a train from a nearby railway station, which was going towards Raipur, they somehow escaped from the caste atrocity. The train in the novel is a signifier. It not only helped Makaru and his parents evade death, but also gave them a new opportunity. When they got down at Raipur railway station for the first time, they felt as strangers. But eventually they made Raipur their home. Life in Raipur city became very different from the village they once belonged to. In the city, nobody asked their caste. They were free to sell their labor and earn their livelihood. Though they lived in a slum where basic amenities were lacking, they somehow managed their lives like thousands of others. Unlike the villagers who were slaves to the landlords and moneylenders, they were free individuals in the city. Having got exposed to a city life, Mokaru and his parents slowly adapted to city lifestyle. Mokaru studied hard and after completing his school education got a job of a peon cum security guard. Even though it was not a highly paid job, it was a departure from what his father did in the city for their survival. Monglu became a rickshaw puller ferrying passengers from one place to another. His was a back-breaking job. Later, Mokaru educates his only son who becomes an office clerk. Such a positive transition in a Dalit family reminds us about the call once Dr. B.R. Ambedkar gave to Dalits. He had asked Dalit to leave the villages and go to the cities because villages in India were stinking hells. By leaving their village, Mokaru and his parents not only escaped their debt, but they also got an opportunity to make their lives the way they wanted. As we all know, city is a place of anonymity, though caste works in a very subtle way. And writers like Ajay Navari and many others, if you read Ajay Navaria's Unclaimed Terrain, he talks about how caste gets operated in a cosmopolitan city like Delhi. So caste does, get operated in a cosmopolitan city, but as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar talks about, caste in a city is anonymity. So I want to, say that had this family continued to live in their village, they would have the victim of caste atrocity like their relatives at Latho. While traveling by the train to Latho, Mokaru becomes conscious of his Dalit identity. Recollecting those oppressive days at Banjipali village, he imagines how his relatives at Latho would have suffered due to caste revenge. He thinks that train as a modern vehicle is also an equalizer. He is a Dalit, but even if he jostles together, sits close to other passengers, sometimes rubbing hands or shoulders with others, nobody asks him his surname or caste. By the that way, surname is our caste, and that's where Vasudev Sunani's poem. There is a famous poem by Vasudev Sunan, which is part of undergraduate syllabus in Delhi University called Prayer, talks about surname is nothing but caste. Living in Raipur for quite some time, Mokaru has realized that cities stand for anonymity. And like the city, the train also stands for anonymity and equality at least for the same class of passengers. Though that we have first class passengers, second class, AC, and in fact that general that bogies are there. Karl Marx, in the context of caste in India, has stated that once the train, a byproduct of industrialization and modernization, is introduced in India, caste will gradually disappear. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Trains were introduced in India during the British rule from 1850s, but caste has not disappeared yet. Rather than disappearing, it is getting strengthened more and more day by day. Mokaru doubts that a day will come when caste will disappear. When Mokaru reaches the relief camp, his doubts are strengthened. He sees his relatives, men, women, and children. All of them have become skeletons overnight. He can see sadness on their faces and tears in their eyes. He meets Chitrada, who was once one of the richest men in the village. A Dalit becoming a rich is definitely a, that uh, dangerous potential, because the upper caste might take revenge. And this is what, that happened to Chitrada. He had lost everything in the riots. Recollecting Chitrada's struggle in life, which is a rags to riches story, Mokaru cannot believe that even a good-hearted, gentle, polite, and charitable Chitrada can be a victim of upper caste hatred. This is what, that I want to talk about caste prejudice. During the few days he spent with Chitrada, he comes to know how the government authorities are treating the victims as criminals while the actual criminals are out enjoying their days. How government compensation is meager as compared to the laws Dalit have accrued. How there is no Dalit unity to fight for justice, and how educated Dalit youths who are in charge of the accounts have become corrupt by eating away money coming from the charitable organization for their kith and kin, etc. There are some of the These are some of the critical views of the author himself. By raising this issue, Sunani perhaps subtly suggests that Dalit movement in Odisha has declined due to disunity among Dalit. Here one is reminded of Saran Kumar Limbale's novel Hindu, where the author exactly expresses the similar views. Dalit themselves are responsible for the decline of Dalit movement in Maharashtra. The novel Padapudi comes to an abrupt end when Mokaru, after listening to all the allegations from Chitrada, becomes a mute spectator and plans to leave the relief camp for Raipur, his workplace. He had come to give moral support to his relatives, the victims of caste atrocity. As an ordinary citizen, he alone cannot fight against the state or administration, or for that matter, any authority. So, his helplessness is writ large on his face when he boards the train, leaving his hapless relatives behind. Thus, the novel is a statement about the existence and condition of Dalits, not just in Odisha. I'm talking about Dalit everywhere, who cannot fight against the system in spite of the constitutional laws available to them. I want to conclude. These are some of my conclusions. Please listen to me carefully. Hans Fischer, in his book The Necessity of Art, a Marxist approach, wrote that the purpose of art or literature cannot be merely aesthetic. There has to be a certain moral and social concern also. Though writers cannot actually bring about changes in society, they can at least help creating awareness. Even when they cannot give a solution to the problem, they can at least diagnose the disease. Evaluating certain aspects of British novel, Evan Fleshman writes on the function of literature thus, and I quote uh, Fleshman, literature supplements not only the primary cultural world of language, belief, and behavior, but second level system as well, which like it attempt to discourse of those discourses. As in the human sciences, which have been shown to operate by conceptual schemes tantamount to fiction, the role of literary function is to locate us in our human world, to contrive for us a secure perch in reality by all the arts at its disposal, to determine how literature does this by comparison with the fiction by which the human sciences confront reality will help us towards the special virtue of fiction as genre, towards a supplementary and invaluable contribution to the cultural world, unquote. Thus, literature is not a historical record. It is an imaginative representation of human experience, And so long as it can make us uncomfortable about our small existence by raising certain questions, it has contributed to the human cause. Dalit novelists writing on the caste atrocity in their novels certainly go in this direction. Thank you. Thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you so much, sir. That was indeed a very informative and interesting session. The last part you spoke about making people uncomfortable, very, very relevant, sir. That is what it aims for. So, all the participants, we request you to put your comments as well as questions for sir in the chat box. So, sir, there is a question by Miss Sonali. Could please take that question? Thank you so much, sir, for such enriching, invigorating talk. As per your extensive reading of Dalit narratives, would you please mention some texts where Dalit characters adopting Buddhist religion, as we know, Baba Sahib converted his religion and adopted the Buddhist religion?
Yeah. So the immediate answer will be Sharan Kumar Limbale has two novels, and the first I referred to is Hindu. Hindu is a fascinating tale. You know that there was no time. I would have really quoted from the text, but here is a here are you know that there are characters, Buddhist characters like Milin Kamble, meaning if I you know that I can quote from the novel Milin Kamble, who is a Buddhist Dalit, is finally killed because he wanted to organize Dalit subjectivity to fight against, you know, that the upper caste. So Sonali, you know, that there are two, three other books by Saran Kumar Limbale. One is Bahujan, for example, which is now getting translated and published. Hopefully, you'll be able to read. But the immediate novel that I remember is Hindu. So you can read Hindu in the light of what you asked.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to ask you a question.
Please go ahead, Satya.
Spoke about the representation of Dalits in literature, but do you have any examples of portrayal of Dalit identity in contemporary visual media, like movies or
Yeah. There are now, you know, that one or two students working on both literature and visual, you know, that arts particularly. Say, we have a friend in JNU called Y.S. Aloni. He's the art historian. Who has at least, you know, I remember two books on Dalit art, you know, that how beginning from Ambedkar's, you know, that idea of converting to Buddhism to, you know, that the present day politics whereby Bahujan, you know, that politics in Uttar Pradesh creating lot many statues. So I think about, you know, that at least there are two or three PhD students also working on the same line. So now, you know, that visual arts, particularly Dalit visual arts, is a new area of interest, and people are trying to work on, you know, that how Dalit art, for example, and there are two good books actually, you know, that meaning at least I have read two good books about how Dalit visual arts are becoming a kind of, you know, that interest for researcher and maybe, you know, the teachers to think about there is new creativity, new subjectivity in Dalit discourse.
there is a question by another participant. What can be the significance in talking about the Dalit writers and the Dalit teachers into writing? Do writers like Baba, Perumal Murugan, all reflect and recreate the Dalit life in literature?
Yeah, Dalit life, yes, you know that Bamas is yes, but then Perumal Murugan is obvious, you know, he is not Dalit. So, you know, he's, of course, you know, understanding of Dalit will be very different from, say, you know, that Bamas writing. So, one or two things I just wanted to comment about. One, Bama, when you talked about, if someone talks about, Bama is very, the different writer because she, for the first time, talks about how um religion, caste, and gender. These are the three components because she talks about Dalit Christianity. How Dalit being Christian are also subjected to atrocity. When I talk about Bama, I try to emphasize on she's a Tamil, Dalit, Christian woman writer, the four different subjectivity. Tamil, Dalit, Christian, woman writer. So caste, class, gender, and religion, they come to Murugan's is definitely, that is critical about caste, but his idea of cultural representation, particularly, that the culture that existed earlier in the, maybe, that Tamil countryside, he wants to not only that brings into the limelight, but he also that gives a kind of suggestive how say for example there are certain cultural practice like two-part women, for example, that I'm talking about. There are orthodoxies. So that not all cultural practices among say Dalit or OBC can be taken as sacrosanct. In other words, the Dalit writers are also critical about their past and try to tell us about, that where things go wrong. So these are two of my maybe another observation for the question.
Thank you, sir. I now request our moderator, Dr. Abhisarika Prajapati, to take over and give her remarks.
I'm a moderator for this session just for namesake, sir. I was also I was also listening to you very attentively and got a lot of insight to understand not only Dalit plight in our India, in our country. At the same time, we could also see the atrocities that are happening in day-to-day life, and it is still, very alarming. The statistics that you presented is quite alarming, and that alerts us that how it is probably decreasing, but again, very minimum number. At the same time, it is, probably spreading in different forms. The forms are changing. It is something that we can see. I mean, if I take, for instance, when a woman, she does something good in the field of sports or games or Olympic or any Commonwealth, tournament, usually in Google, we have seen that how people start searching that from which caste that girl or woman is. So this is how we see that how caste is deeply rooted in our society. It has almost become DNA, I feel. And but when we come across the Dalit narratives, we see that how they are representing not only the history of Dalits from their perspective, which is hidden somewhere or muted intentionally, but they are representing their narratives not as victims, but as victorious. And that actually enlightens the very circle of the literature that we have in the form of Dalit literature. So that is something really very, noteworthy development that we see in the recent Dalit writings as well. So with this remark, I stop, sir, and thank you so much for your time, that you could take some time and spend this with us, at least be a part of this conference. And we are really very thankful to you, sir.
No, thank you, Abhisarika. I'll come back. You maybe, that sometime we'll come to Bengaluru
Yeah,
to
sure.
be part of your,
Sure.
that. So there are questions. Do you have time to answer all this? Neha has a question. Akshay has a question. I don't know whether we have time to reply to their question.
At least we can take one question.
Neha has a question. Do we see Orissa as a close cultural community in comparison to South India? That yes and no. Close in the sense that, that I don't understand what you mean by close, because everywhere, that Dalit communities are very, the diverse, uh, and their cultural practice is also very different. There is no intercaste marriages, maybe, that among Dalit themselves. So they have their own hierarchy. So I think, that I'm sure, that all community across India are very diverse and different. Akshay has, sir, what is the basic difference between subaltern and Dalit? Subaltern is a very umbrella term, Akshay, because it can be peasant, poor, Dalit, tribal, maybe, that Muslim, women, etc., etc. Whereas Dalit, as I have already defined, that it is basically a caste term. So subaltern is class terms, whereas Dalit is a caste term. And caste is not class, because class is very dynamic, whereas caste is static. Once a Dalit, always a Dalit, and there is no social mobility. Whereas when we talk about subaltern, maybe there is social mobility. So this is what that I have to talk about.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Then
So
Satya here.
yeah. So shall we sleep now, or Abhisarika, you have to tell me.
Yes, sir. I request Satya now to propose a formal vote
Okay.
of thanks.
Okay.
On behalf of REVA University, I would like to propose the vote of thanks. I would like to express my gratitude to our Honorable Chancellor, Dr. S.P. Shamaraju, Vice Chancellor, Dr. M. Dhanamjaya, Registrar, Dr. N. Ramesh, then Director of the School of Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences, and the Controller of Examinations for all their support and encouragement. My sincere appreciation for our resource person, Raj Kumar, for that wonderful session and your thought-provoking observations, and our moderator, Dr. Abhisarika Prajapati. I would also like to thank the faculty members, research scholars, and all the participants for joining us today. I wish a good day to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice interacting it all. So goodbye to everyone. Please take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think we can end the session now.
I can ask participants to enable their video so that we can take a picture quickly. Yeah, please. Yeah, that's done. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you all at 3:30 p.m. We have next keynote session by Dr. Albrecht Klassen. Thank you.